Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our amazing podcast with DentMent. Today, we are joined by two wonderful and amazing human beings from Hey Donto, one of which is no stranger to building and scaling businesses
And
with
Dr. Reza is actually down at our office in Guadalajara. I was down there with him over the weekend, and we were lucky enough to do some tequila tasting in Tequila, Jalisco. So naturally, my tequila background matches the company now today.
You might have to teach me because I can't do tequila after my 21st birthday. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but that was a long time ago. So maybe you guys can help me reintroduce it to my repertoire.
So for us, we want to make data accessible for read and write. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of companies, AI phone agents, charting companies, periograph AI companies, analytics, finance. In order for all those AI companies to run, they need access to data. And a lot of the times they need the ability to write data. I think that's what ends up happening. Anytime you see an industry dying or some sort of carve out dying off, you find a lot illogical conclusions to justify their actions at the end of the day. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. You know how many times I talk to people that have been like, this practice management system has been telling them for 3 years they're going to make these endpoints available, and like they're not able to at the end of the day. And so, but I also have to ask these smaller practice management systems, there's no way they're going to go back to their private equity and say, oh, by the way, we need X amount of money for additional engineers to put this solution in play. And I think that's a problem they have too, right? Like managing like APIs and data access is something that you can hire someone off Craigslist to do, right? It's basically using aggregated diagnostic data to perform clinical trials and evaluating the effectiveness and safety of drugs, treatment, diagnostics, the basis for like modern medicine. There's never been a clinical assay ever done in the dental industry, not one, because there's never been the ability to get aggregated diagnostic data. We stand to change that, right?
Right, sure. So the first plan is to expose the mapping strategies to the clients and letting them see like how our mappers and our AI has decided a specific strategy for the mapping within the syntax that we have for the mapping.
Can you
decisions.
elaborate on that? What do you mean on mapping?
So that is basically the data mapping profile that says like the field A of the patient data in the EHR got mapped into a field B in the FHIR data structure on the target data source. So you see that as a syntax definition, or like how this mapping decision got finalized.
So, sorry, just for my own understanding, is that controlled by AI?
Yes, that's generated by our model. So
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our amazing podcast with DentMent. Today, we are joined by two wonderful and amazing human beings from Hey Donto, one of which is no stranger to building and scaling businesses with 20 plus years. By the way, my versions of intros are always a little like wingy and fun. So I'll do an intro and then I will certainly ask you two gentlemen to go into more detail. But mine for you, Rivers, is exciting because you've 20 plus years of experience and you have some exits under your belt, which are amazing, including Cloud Retriever and Vet Marketing Pro. And you are now leading the charge at Hey Donto, an AI company shaking up dental practices and how they manage their day-to-day. Current sponsor of the upcoming DICOMA, so that's really exciting. And Reza, again, super pumped for you both to be here. We'd love to hear a little bit more from you guys because you are you, and we'd love to hear about you. And we have some great questions for you. Please take it away, Rivers, with your amazing background, by the way.
Well, thanks. I was in animal health, and there's a lot of similarities between dental and animal health. We've got the same distributors, really a lot of the same systems. They own the same practice management systems, same lingo. In fact, I sat on the board with someone that owned a inventory company in dental, and they also owned one in animal health. And so really when we had exited in animal health, we had done a pretty deep analysis, and we chose the dental industry. At the end of the day, there was a lot of opportunity. And so my background is I love starting stuff. I love building teams. I love the early days. I love solving problems, no matter what it might be. I really love supporting the team and like giving them the power to be autonomous and make decisions early on and get behind them. And so I've been lucky enough to do that at Cloud Retriever, and we did have an exit there. And then I was also lucky enough to also have an exit with Vet Marketing Pro. And so very excited about entering the dental space. We started here about 2 years ago with our research and starting to perform our analysis to figure out where the problem was and exactly what our strategy was going to be to solve it.
Very cool. And you have the coolest background and cool name. So like you've got all that going for you too.
Well, thank you. It's my tequila connection. I live in Tennessee, and most people would think it's a bourbon collection, but I'm a tequila person. Dr. Reza is actually down at our office in Guadalajara. I was down there with him over the weekend, and we were lucky enough to do some tequila tasting in Tequila, Jalisco. So naturally, my tequila background matches what's happening now today.
You might have to teach me because I can't do tequila after my 21st birthday. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but that was a long time ago. So maybe you guys can help me reintroduce it to my repertoire.
I mean, we definitely are up for that department. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah, for having me. And yeah, my name is Reza from Iran. My background is basically engineering, been into different startups, like early startups or like also big enterprises. Just enjoyed my time building teams and going through discoveries and building new approaches for like solving different problems, mainly around data. And then I landed myself to just study my PhD for AI and machine learning. Yeah, just right about the end. And when I just finished my thesis around multiple projects with data, got lucky enough to get introduced to Rivers, and we just clicked from then. And here I am today after 2 years of great experience with building cool features for HeyDonto.
Yeah. And kind of to give you some more of the background for us, we had kind of this was the thesis that we started off with, and it was incredibly ambitious. Normally, it would have been one that would have been very difficult to achieve, and that's kind of where Dr. Reza's research comes in. But here was the thesis. We wanted to figure out how to take all of the practice management systems, the on-prem and on the cloud, and we wanted to figure out how to make a real-time clone of that data, not every piece of it, and put it in a modern cloud infrastructure. And we wanted to make that accessible via API for instantaneously read and write into every field. That was the first part of the thesis. The second part of the thesis was we wanted to pick a standardization for the first time. And so what we picked was the FHIR standardization, the Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resource. That's actually the standardization that the ADA is what they're getting behind today, right? There's a giant push with them to bring this FHIR standardization. So our thesis was put it all in a modern cloud infrastructure, put it all in the FHIR standard for the first time so that practice management system data could talk to each other. And that thesis, if you look at human healthcare and their journey to FHIR, it was like a 10-year journey, billions and billions of dollars. What made this possible for us, and we put the FHIR platform up before we ever raised any money or anything. Dr. Reza's research for his PhD, he did 3 PhD programs there, or theses. One of the theses was on optimization of deep learning algorithms for large scale digital data processing using evolutionary neural networks. And so he had developed a new machine learning model, different than traditional CNNs and RNNs and CNN LSTM combos. But the heart of this model was it would map the data itself using AI to the FHIR standard. So instead of us having to go out and get $100 million to $200 million and have developers map it all, we are an engineering first platform. But we miraculously, I was matched up with Dr. Reza at the time. He was at the University of Germany, the other end of the world. And he had finished research that was basically going to solve the problem that I had just identified. And by a miracle, we were connected through a mutual friend. And that became the journey that became the beginning of Hey Donto at the end of the day.
So you guys are smart is what you're saying, essentially.
We try to be. I had written at the time, the early stages of Hey Donto was very, very different than where we are today. But I had written this paper and it was like this universal data organizer. And like Dr. Reza read it and it was just like, whoo, it was like an instant connection, right? And here this guy was, I mean, developing this technology that I don't think he understood where he would be able to apply it to, right? At the end of the day. And so today we're like in conversations with SAP and large human healthcare brands that are wanting just to license our FHIR Mapper API, right? Or AI. And so, you know, we picked dental as our giant beachhead for deployment of this technology at the end of the day. And so it's been you know, we become brothers, Reza and I, is a good way to put it over time, right? Very close connection.
Is your relationship similar to me and Masood? Because we don't have a good relationship.
Let's see, how are you?
Good to see you, Masood.
Very good to see you guys. How are you guys doing? Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Today is Canada Day. I don't know if you guys know about it.
And what does that mean?
It's Canada Day. It's pretty much like Independence Day for US.
Yeah.
So I was out camping and I literally canceled this so I can just make it to this podcast.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Very nice to see you guys.
Absolutely.
So,
So
Mr. Rivers, the one thing I wanted to ask is when I look at your product as far as HeyDonto, what is really what gap in the dental industry are you really trying to close? What is the benefit to dental practices of using your services? Like, what is really the goal that you're trying to accomplish with it?
So for us, we want to make data accessible for read and write. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of companies, AI phone agents, charting companies, periograph AI companies, analytics, finance. In order for all those AI companies to run, they need access to data. And a lot of the times they need the ability to write data. We were talking with a very large AI company today that's got massive traction in the dental space. And for their thesis, their vision, they want to be able to write additional fields that they can't write. These a lot of times include fields like unstructured data, like perio measure, notes, maybe insurance plans, et cetera. And so for us, we want to make it possible for all of the builders, all the tech companies to be able to build their vision, right? In order for them to do that, they ultimately need access to data. They need the ability to write data. There are a bunch of people out there, I call them cowboys, that allow technology partners to get access to maybe appointments or patients. And that area is not really anything unique for what we're doing there. We find where we get a lot of interest are once we start getting outside those traditional endpoints. So when we start moving into really in-depth fire endpoints, unstructured data, we've got lines and lines of companies that are in the sandbox or in some level of deployment to get access to that data. And so that was really our system is we wanted to make access to the data. And for our on-prem stuff, we're able to give access in real time. And so if someone puts, if they write an insurance plan in, instantaneously it shows up on the on-prem in this clinic. If someone in the clinic puts an insurance plan in, instantaneously it shows up on our API, right? And so for us, we eventually want, our vision is to be the data aggregator for the entire dental industry. We then see practice management systems themselves that aren't able to actually make all of their endpoints of their own system available, right? Like they can maybe only make 5 endpoints available, and it's their own system. And so we even see the future where they're using our API to actually gain access to their own endpoints to their own customers, right? And so because it's going to be more efficient, they don't have to put their own engineering resources into it. And for us, we're an API first platform based on, some peer-reviewed research that we have. And we have we're an engineering first team. We've got a large engineering team at the end of the day. And that's really what our competitive advantage is we've got an incredible tech, but we're able to provide access to these traditional endpoints that have never been able to be accessed.
Rivers, I'm curious. So I'm just a simple girl, unicorn, whatever. I like glitter and sparkles, but I've heard the word interoperability so many times. And I feel like people, so one, I'd love to know more from myself about that. But two, are there roadblocks that you're running into in the industry when you talk to them about this? Like, do they really understand? Do they understand that they have a need for this? Like, I'm just curious what the feedback is that you are getting from industry partners and people in the industry.
Yeah. So let me split that into the 2 parts. We'll start with the interoperability and then hit the feedback next. So in terms of interoperability, here's the best way I can explain this. Okay. Sarah, you are walking down the stairs of your new place and you sprain your ankle. Okay. And you call your new primary care physician in Utah. He says, come on in. He looks at your ankle and he says, gosh, that thing looks swollen. Let's order an x-ray. Sends you somewhere else for an x-ray. Calls you up that day and says, I got bad news. It's broken. I've got to refer you to an orthopedic specialist. 2 days later, you're at the specialist. He looks at your x-ray and says, Sarah, we've got to do surgery with this to fix it. And I'm going to schedule you for surgery for Friday. And that scenario right there, your patient journey, your patient record, it moved seamlessly between these 4 different systems that weren't the same or weren't connected. And what made that happen is FHIR, Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resource. That's the standard that made that connection possible at the end of the day. And so the interoperability is the ability to move patient data through different practice management systems through that standardization or through an API at the end of the day. And so that's the best way to look at interoperability. I was talking to someone today. I explained that same thing. He goes, gosh, you're right. I literally just switched dentists in my own town, and they made me start all brand new and all my own paperwork, all new x-rays, new everything, because nothing can transfer. Referrals, like if it's to a different practice management system, that's coming via fax, right, at the end of the day. And so FHIR was adopted in the United States in the late 90s. It's a standard in human healthcare. It's the backbone of the medicine, how it works. Adopted in Europe, North America, Canada. Somehow the dental industry didn't adopt it. Now, I was just on a meeting with the ADA last week, and they are pushing heavily. They're actually working with HL7, who is the FHIR standardization board, to really drive home this interoperability, right? And so for us, we're leading the charge in terms of bringing interoperability. That's our business at the end of the day, is to allow all dental data to talk to each other, to move seamlessly, interact, et cetera. And by doing that, we can give companies a single API where they can access all of the dental data from all the practice management systems through one unified API. The feedback that we're getting is this: people are so new to FHIR that you've got some industry titans like the ADA. You've got the guy at Membersley that wrote the article on interoperability from the dental industry. I think his name's Bo or something. But we were on with a very large company today, massive company. And at the end of the day, we're having to also educate people on FHIR standardization. I remember the first time I talked to Masood, he was like, well, how does the appointment poll work for FHIR standardization, right? And what it is people are so used to pulling just regular endpoints. And so the person told us today, like, I can't even figure out on your FHIR API where the stuff's at, right? And so we're having to also have like a Bible for people to say, here's how FHIR works at the end of the day. And so everyone wants interoperability. They don't know what it means, right? And so we're riding the wave of that, but we're also having to educate on how FHIR works, right? When you get into it's an incredible resource that it takes into account any sort of patient data, patient history, patient scenario, and it seamlessly can move that to any structure or unstructure within the system. And so that's really what the vision here is long term.
Thank you.
So, Rivers, I really want to get into the technical side of this stuff, but I don't want to give everyone else a headache. I can talk with Reza for days about these things, but I want to get into the logistics part of things. Why is it that there's kind of like a mafia around the API side of things with all the dental softwares, like the main softwares that people in dentistry use? What's with that? Because last time, I was talking to basically a PMS here in Canada, ClearDent.
Yep. So it's so interesting because when you move away from the dental industry, I was talking to a guy that started a company called Augie that helps people aggregate their patient data in human healthcare. And in human healthcare mainstream, we've got the CARES Act, we've got TEFCA, and we've got the recent ruling with real-time medical system versus point-click care. It's a federal ruling that laid down the law in terms of patients sharing data. And there is no blocking of patient data in human health. There's been a federal ruling on that. They ruled it's anti-competitive, and the CARES Act and TEFCA demands it, right? And so I've got news for the practice management systems out there, but there's a legal ruling coming on this that's going to give us a legal opinion for the data sharing that we're bringing to this industry at the end of the day. And there's absolutely nothing the practice management systems can do to stop it. And if they try, it's already been ruled by this federal judge it's anti-competitive. What that means is not only can they not stop it, but if they do, they create liability in doing it. And so I think the days of the practice management mafia, as you put it, are over at the end of the day.
Last time, I was at this event, Pacific Dental Conference. It was like a dental event here in Canada. It was very big. It was about 15,000 people. I was talking to the CEO of ClearDent, and then those days I provided an API for read access, but not for write access. And then he was standing at a booth, and I asked him, why don't you just provide the write access tool? You got the team, you can easily build it. It's been 3 years that you guys are saying we're going to build it, but it's nowhere. And he was like, do you want to know the truth? I was like, sure. I just made a friend out of him for a while so that he could run me through what's going on really in the background. And it was like, the right access is really ours. As soon as we give our right access to other companies, and we're technically giving away everything that we've built. His thinking was so outdated. He had no idea what he's talking about. He thought that as soon as he gives right access, people are going to steal his platform.
I think that's what ends up happening. Anytime you see an industry dying or some sort of carve out dying off, you find a lot illogical conclusions to justify their actions at the end of the day. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. How many times I talk to people that have been like, this practice management system has been telling them for 3 years they're going to make these endpoints available, and like they're not able to at the end of the day. And so, but I also have to ask these smaller practice management systems, there's no way they're going to go back to their private equity and say, oh, by the way, we need X amount of money for additional engineers to put this solution in play. And I think that's a problem they have too, right? Like managing like APIs and data access is something that you can hire someone off Craigslist to do, right? And I think some of these practice management systems have struggled too. And then they're like, can we justify the cost, justify the maintenance of all that sort of stuff? So it's going to be real interesting to see what the next 18 months hold, though.
Yeah, for sure. I think right now, like, especially with the ones that they don't allow other softwares to run on top of them, I think that they're going to run so much behind the competition because there are so many companies that right now they are integrating with these things and, like like Overjet, like many other companies I can't even remember the names right now. I just don't know how the competition is going to be like because, in a year or two that people will see that they're going to have a PMS and they're going to have these 10 other extra tools next to it. And now they're going to have a PMS that's just a PMS alone. I think no one's going to pick the one that's the PMS alone. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like having an iPhone that's only able to call someone. Like you don't have any other applications on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, let's look at mainstream human health as our leader, right? Some of the strongest solutions are independent of the main EHR systems, right? The best chance that they have is bringing and buying technology. These old stagnant PIM systems can't move fast enough to innovate, right? That's traditionally been the problem with all large companies, right? That's why they use AI as an innovation strategy, right? That's their only option. And the ones that don't and keep themselves closed off, I couldn't agree with you more. I think they're going nowhere because people want modern solutions. They want to use stuff like Pearl and Overjet, right? They want to use perio charting and fun AI there. But like, if you're going to stop people from accessing that, at the end of the day, they're going to leave your practice management systems. I think, it's more about open source, sharing. I mean, that's where everything, you look at other industry, that's where everything's been headed, right? Like industries that start to stay stagnant, closed off and centralized, they don't typically fend well at the outcome at the end of the day. And I think I couldn't agree with your point more. I think the same thing will happen here. The company I've heard about this guy, yes.
Just what we do is very simple, like, AI appointment booking, we do outstanding treatments and those stuff, but there are many other applications. So we went to them and we were like, we want to build this integration so that we can firstly give it to, there has been other colleagues of mine that they were trying to, not colleagues, but like, people that are doing other things in the same industry that they have asked for this kind of integration. And all I had to tell them that was that in the Canadian market, like there's no such thing as integration. People don't believe in that. I just told them, and what are you guys thinking about building this? And right off the bat, they were like, no, we don't have that. We can only give you read access. I was like, read access is useless. Like there's nothing we can do with that. And then after that, we just went ahead and we just tried to find our way in a tricky way to try to install their application on a fake clinic so that we can build the integration with. The guy, like, he got, I don't know, he was just so suspicious that he kind of figured out that we were trying to do that. He was like, I'm not going to give you the software ever again. Please don't call me ever again. I was like, dude, what's going on? Like, we're trying to add value to your software. Why are you so much like this? Like,
It's so
I just don't know.
that because without going into specifics, because I can't, but I would imagine there's a large group in Canada that's on that tracker system. And I would imagine that large group in Canada is wanting to explore other solutions, revenue cycle management, maybe some AI agent, et cetera. And I'm sure that group's talking with people right now, right? And at the end of the day, their goal of being able to do revenue cycle management and some of these other theses and strategic goals far outweighs the gain of staying on tracker. And either way, they're going to build the integration without them. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's a perfect example of someone that's unwilling to innovate, someone that's unwilling to do partnerships at the end of the day. And their own customers are asking for it, right? Your own customers are begging for it and you can't help them get access to innovate. I mean, it's a lose-lose for a tracker in that situation.
And it really is because I've been talking to these people. Like many of the people have been wanting Peril for so long. And I'm not just talking about Tracker. I'm talking about every Canadian PMS. Like none of them has any kind of
PMSs because for us, we identify that as a massive opportunity, right? None of them at the end of the day, and everyone we talk to wants access to these Canadian PMSs, right? So it's very interesting in that sense when you talk about that. I guess it's because they were all initial legacy on-prem, and then they didn't have an innovative architectural platform to start with, and it makes it harder. But I mean, you'd probably know more. They just don't want to spend the resources. They want to stay closed out. They fear of loss. I mean, there's probably a ton of different things that are contributing to this train of thought that they have.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason is that the owners are very outdated in their kind of thinking, and they just don't want to just put the first step, in innovation. They just have something, they have like 2,000, 3,000 clients and they're happy with it. And even though their clients are all complaining, like they're like, it's okay, they're still clients, they're still paying the monthly bills. So as long as that's the case, we're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's basically the scenario. And I think when you look at that, though, let's say they just have a fixed amount of clients. They've managed that business now in a sense where their goal is EBITDA most likely at that point. They're not going to sell it. So it's not like an ARR multiple. So whoever the stakeholder is probably wanting to drop retained earnings to the bottom line. That being said, what's the thesis to that guy? Go, hey, you need to spend an extra 400,000 this year to develop your API. And it's like, that 400,000 was going to be a retained earnings in his pocket, right? And so I think that is the issue right there too, right? You've got younger companies, they're innovating themselves internally, right? Like we're not beholden to any stakeholders. We are going to innovate however we want at the end of the day, right? But our board is myself and my two founders at the end of the day, right? That allows us to be nimble, allows us to innovate, right? And so I think there might even be a bit of this corporate greed that's causing this, right? Like, because whoever owns these companies, they're the stakeholder. Strategic has to come to them and say, let's do this development, right? And that's an expense, and it's going to be right off the bottom line that was going to be dropping in their pocket. And if that company's not an acquisition or an M&A target, how else do investors get their money out of it? Dividends, retained earnings, the only option. So I think you've got a bit of that. And so you probably got a bit of like PE/investors that are causing some of these issues too, letting them not innovate, not giving them the additional funds, and basically making them squeeze EBIT out each year,
And somehow it kind of makes sense, River. Sorry, I know you can try to ask question. I'm just trying to finish this discussion. I think about the Canadian market, before we move on to the next topic, it somewhat makes sense because in the US, we have about like 200,000 clinics. But here in Canada, there's only 16,000 of them. So there's not so much competition. So you know what I mean? Like even if these solutions try to add more value and try to innovate more, because out of the 17,000, I think about 40% of the market is attached to them and they're not going to go anywhere no matter what. So they have no incentive to do anything about it.
And speaking of, who do you see today? We know the old legacy on-prems, right? Like when you talk about modern PIMs today, who comes to mind for you? Like when you think about a modern cloud, a real modern,
Dentico.
yeah. And why is that?
Well, I think because they're on top of innovation. Like they're the very first company that made an integration with Peril, like, a deep integration, not just a simple sort of integration.
Yeah.
And, they're just on top of things. Like I had a client that it's a DSO that has 13 clinics and their clinics were between Open Dental, Dentrix, and Eaglesoft. They migrated all of them to Denticon.
Yeah.
So that tells you about the value.
Very familiar with Planet DDS and had some discussions with them. We've had their customers coming to us asking for additional endpoints, asking for additional fields. I think that's an interesting use case there, right? And so here you've got a modern system. They're not able to provide the full endpoint packages that anything outside of scheduling basically needs, right? Now, you talked about the use case with Pearl. Who knows the engineering prowess that went in to make that happen, right? But obviously it wasn't some sort of enterprise or scalable API solution that everyone, it was a one-on-one professional services deal, right? At the end of the day. But I think that brings up a good case. Like here, we've got one of the most modern systems, and like, why don't they have a full API exposed? Why aren't they letting their practices share data and write data? Why don't they become the leader? Why don't they become the bulwark, right? At the end of the day. And so I think that what that is, it's just an indication with how behind the industry is, right? At the end of the day. Because if that's the most modern, when you compare that to some other industries, and we want to look at modern, you'll see incredible robust APIs for read and write across every single endpoint, field, and table, right? And so I keep coming back to that question. If I can see that in animal health, where there's only 22,000 veterinary hospitals in the United States, why don't we see that in dental when there's 200,000, right? Much bigger market, 10 times the size, right? It's lacking that innovation, right? At the end of the day. And so it'll really be interesting to see if we can get a modern cloud leader, right? That actually is an API first PIM. So I don't think we have an API first PIMs, do we? We don't. It's interesting. I can think My buddy in animal health, Sam Ginn, he started an API first PIMS in animal health, massive exit, right? I'm looking to see someone like that, because to me, I think that'll be real innovation, right? When you can make your data available, when you can let builders connect, when you can let people like yourself, Masood, come in and instantly build an integration, right? And then you get to see if your product has real value now, right? And so it'll be interesting to see if we can find a real API first PIMS leader here in the next bit that comes out in dental.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Like, innovation on the dental side, especially because of these mainframe applications, has been very limited so far, and we're so much behind the other industries, I would say.
Yeah.
So from
Totally agree.
somebody in dental, because typically people who come from outside of dental share your frustrations. And I will say that we feel like we are the most unique unicorns in this entire world. It doesn't matter to us if it works in, or it doesn't matter, but it has to be presented. And it's such a fascinating industry. I work a lot with industry partners who want to, have more clients that are DSOs. And if you can't prove that you are going to make them money, it's very hard for them to adopt something like that. Utilizing fear of loss, or things that you can't see. It's something that's so difficult for our industry to grasp, whether you are a practice, whether you're an industry partner. And so for people like you, I know that that's a tough thing, and education is super important. But for the people who do adopt it, they're going to be super, super successful. So because I work with industry partners all day, every day. And to even, talking to cybersecurity companies, you've got Aspen, who's dealing with all of these terrible things, MGM, all these other practices never think that this is going to happen to them or affect them, because it's not something that they can see. And Rivers, you said it, PE, they're so focused on money and dollars that things like this don't necessarily make sense to them. So it's tough for sure.
Here's, I think, to me, this is one of the most stark pieces right here. I didn't know what this was, but if you're familiar with what a clinical assay is, it's basically using aggregated diagnostic data to perform clinical trials and evaluating the effectiveness and safety of drugs, treatment, diagnostics, the basis for like modern medicine. There's never been a clinical assay ever done in the dental industry, not one, because there's never been the ability to get aggregated diagnostic data. We stand to change that, right? I think there's a gentleman at Spectrum Solutions. He's a PhD. They make the collection kits for 23andMe, Ancestry, and some of the other collection kits here in dental. And he's got an ambitious goal of putting together the first clinical assays. We're hoping that our platform will be the partner for them, because we can actually deliver them the data, the aggregated diagnostic data that they need. So, but I think that's a really stark connection. And how does that benefit anyone when we've never had a clinical assay? Like, it's like we're shutting off innovation, and at the end of the day, we're preventing this from medicine from moving forward, right? Dental medicine. And so it comes back, I think, to the point of who's stopping it from happening, right? At the end of the day, and because there's no natural reason for that to stop. There's no one wants it to stop. No one wants innovation to stop. No one wants to say, yeah, let's never have a clinical assay so that we can't improve treatment outcomes in dental and et cetera. So it's really interesting to see. Real eye-opening as I got into it, though.
Quick question I had about that, Reverse. So once you are like building this synchronizer with practices and like with PMSs, with some of the PMSs, you have two options: either to go through the front door, which is, building the direct API with what they have provided and just providing it as one API so that, different solutions don't have to create like different integrations with all of them. You just provide it as one API. Or you can just basically copy their data on their database and try to build the integration that way. Which one do you prefer? Especially after talking to clients and after, approaching these clinics and how they see it as. Does my question make sense?
Yeah. So first of all, we're not going to use any existing APIs of any practice management system. Our goal is to, first of all, they might have latency issue, scale issue, call issue, pull limit, rate limit, whatever it might be. Our goal is to, whether it's cloud-based or on-prem, for our synchronizer to build a real-time backup of that data in a Firestore. And hopefully it's done within about 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the day. And so we want people that are building to query the dentist Firestore. And so in theory, the dentist is the one that installs the synchronizer. The dentist shares their data to the dentist Firestore at the end of the day. And so that way we've now got a scenario. We've been able to determine that we've got a live copy of the data. And so we'd rather have people access that live copy that we make, because that's in a modern cloud infrastructure at the end of the day. And you can call it all day long. There's no rate limits. There can be 10 different, tech companies calling the API. And the best part about it is we don't put any strain on the server or the practice management system. And so, at the end of the day, we're not going to use any existing integrations. We're not going to use any existing APIs. If we did, our technology would be limit to the threshold performance of that existing API at the end of the day.
And how do practices approach that? Like once you tell them that this is the way that we're building it, how, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much more positive reviews do you get than negative? Because some practices I've talked to, and as soon as I tell them synchronize, they're like, no, thank you so much. And some of them, they're like, that's okay, depending on the company that's providing that.
Yeah. So let's talk about this right now. Okay. Right now, practice management systems that have APIs share their data with different vendors. Okay. I could go to any dentist right now and ask them, who's accessing your data? And you know what they're all going to tell me? I have no freaking clue. How is that HIPAA compliant? It's not. So when we explain our solution, we usually get an aha moment, because here's the solution. You get to control your data. That's what HIPAA says. The patient has granted you, the dentist, right to the data. When you install our synchronizer, you're deciding who to share your data with. So if an AI agent wants to come up and sign you up at a show, you get to share the data to that AI agent. If you quit working with them, you have the ability to turn off access to that company that you were sharing data with. So our solution, for the first time ever, puts the dentist in full control of the data and the patient data. They can see who's accessing the data through our synchronizer. And if they turn off the synchronizer or turn off a vendor, they can shut it down. And we both know there's a couple cowboy solutions out there. And I wonder, first of all, those cowboy solutions never have the dental office sign a terms of service. So they're in full violation of HIPAA, because there's never a BA that allows them to access the data at the end of the day. Those solutions aren't going to work in the long term. And so we've done that extra step. And if you think about those cowboy solutions, how many open accesses of data do you think those old synchronizers from those cowboy solutions are just sharing data with who knows who? We secret shopper tested some of those cowboy solutions. We were shocked to find out that they don't ever get authorization from the dental office to actually have data pulled through them. Our huge HIPAA team at a large international law firm was shocked when they analyzed their stuff. They think they're in full violation of HIPAA across the board. And so when we explain all that and we tell them that you, for the first time ever, get to control who accesses your data, we kind of flip the switch and we give them an aha moment. And so we fought tooth and nails with legal on this. I was like, we had to build a portal that allows them to see who's going to access the data. And he's like, yeah, if you guys really want to be the new gold standard here, right? And so that was the solution we developed at the end of the day. And so it's, once we have that explanation, we typically get an extremely positive reaction at that point.
Curious, Milad, since you are the target audience for industry partners who want your business, I want to know, Mr. Being Silent this entire time, I want to know your thoughts.
No, I mean, the product definitely makes sense, because like I recently had an issue with actually a patient in the state of Iowa when I was practicing there. The office shut down, the patient wants their data and their data is nowhere to be found. The server crashed, they don't know where their data is. And now I'm in trouble with the state of Iowa and their whole entire board saying, where's the patient? I'm like, well, practice wasn't mine and the data is essentially lost. So what Mr. Rivers is mentioning makes sense, right? Because at that point, the patient is going to have a control of where their data is, where their information is at, regardless of what happens. Mr. River, is that something that essentially, if the patient, let's say if the patient's data is, the server crashes, whatever platform are they on, is that a way for them to kind of access their stuff through your platform?
We actually are making it's basically a real-time clone. And so if they lost all their data, we could technically push it back in for them at the end of the day. And so we technically are taking care of that. And back to your question, as the ultimate end user, as the dentist here, this is our vision. We're going to develop a certification program for integrations, and we're working with some very large players to get behind this. Okay. We want, if someone's building an integration, we want to know that it's all these things: HIPAA, GDRP. Is it compliant with the CARES and TEFCA? Is it compliant with the medical systems versus real-time medical versus point-click care? And at the end of the day, we want to distinguish the cowboys. The cowboys aren't going to get this certification. And what that's going to mean is you, as a dentist, when you talk to a vendor, the first thing you're going to want to know is, are you using an integration solution that's certified, that's compliant, right? And that's going to give you peace of mind as the dentist, right? Yeah, we are certified, we are compliant. Phew, I know that they're doing two-way encryption, encryption at rest, encryption at transit. They're compliant here, they're this, and this. And we want to take that and put that standard in place. And we're going to create a new way versus the old way. And we're going to separate ourselves from the cowboys out there. And what the industry is going to see is these cowboys, first of all, don't have the resources, the technology, or the prowess to be this compliant, to have their technology built this way at the end of the day. So that's our vision that we're working on. That's a big thing that we're going to release to the industry.
That's awesome. Well, the question for Reza, Mr. Reza, how do you find those data, necessary data for you to be able to, like, where do you get your main research from to be able to kind of put this whole thing together? Or is that like, do you go to a place to find your data? Are you building the data? So how are you really putting that together when it comes to the data and things like that?
Right.
And Reza, you might want to speak up just a little bit. It was a little quiet last time. Sorry.
Right. Let me bring this one closer. I hope the sound is better now. So the perspective here in the scientific, like the approach that we have, is very broad, and we just not focusing on particular data structure here, or like just the dental data or a medical or healthcare data. Our focus is that we build a scientific approach that is unique for mapping any data structure to any other data structure. So we want the innovation happen in any industry without having to deal with any data issues. And we hope that we build this mechanism that our model is able to process any data to understand first what the data structures are in that industry, understand how to process that data, how to understand the definitions in that data, and build a mapping profiling for that data to move to a more modern or more structured way to another target data source. So in the context of our industry in the dental, is that makes sense toward like what the data is in the EHR systems and all the issues that there is with segmentation there and with the structure there, and also the problem with how the data is locked in those systems, and how those data should be transformed and moved into a FHIR data structure, which enables all the innovation and enables all the interoperability. So that is the use case of our mapper and our model, to be able to first understand these two data structures and compile and build a mapping profile that can in real time transfer and convert this data to the modern data structure. So that's pretty much the overall perspective here. And we first started by having like in the equation here, we have like the data source structure, and we have the data target structure. So on our first round of researches, we focus on how to dynamically understand the source data structure, and we kept the target data source as FHIR as our primary mapping target for our model to build the profiles and data mapping strategies for. And in our new researches that we are doing right now, we are focusing on also building a dynamic output for that data structure and be able to map data to other structures as well. Like for some of our clients that they wouldn't necessarily need to use FHIR, but they would like to build their own standardization, or they would like our model to build up a data mapping profile and data structure for the target of the mapping. So we are collaborating with other scientists, and we relying on our strong team in-house, and we just basically moving toward that direction.
That's amazing.
And
Mr. River, sorry, man. So I'm going to ask one more question from
yeah,
Mr.
for
River.
sure. Go for it.
Mr. River, when you guys building the platform out, because the one thing that you mentioned about was that you want to make sure that everything that you're doing has to be a standard to the HIPAA, right? Because you don't want to violate any of that. How do you make sure that the data that you guys are building that is kind of like aligned with HIPAA and you're not violating any of that? What type of things do you have to do there?
Yeah, Reza, I'll let you handle this. I don't steal your thunder. Why don't you hit up some of the regulatory and security stuff that we have to do to stay compliant at the end of the day? Because there's a lot. And I was reading through your pre-note shows, and I think one of the questions was about kind of balancing innovation with compliance. How do you do that? I thought about that for a while, and I think my answer is you don't. You go and both on heart. You go all in on both of those, right? At the end of the day. And I think that's what we've lacked a little bit. We want to be compliant. We did all the extra stuff, did encryption at rest, encryption at transit, et cetera. But really, I don't think you've got to do both at the end of the day, because, we talk about ethical considerations for AI. It's something we all hear about. But when you talk about balancing those two pieces right there, I think that's the fundamental essence of that ethical API AI. So Reza, share some of the stuff that we do for our compliance, security, et cetera.
Right, sure. I would love that. So the primary issue with any data mapping solution is data transition. So how can you build a very secure way of transforming the data from these EHR systems and map them and do everything that is required for modernizing this data structure and classifying this data structure, right? So we had to, on top of everything that we have built so far, we had to pay extra attention on this matter and build the proper data transformation procedure with this. And that's goes from the data collection, starts from there. Like the first data that we get out from the EHR systems, they immediately get into encrypted state, which are only decrypted. They get encrypted as soon as we touch the data, and they get decrypted when the user actually is asking for it. So we never expose our data to any of our services without having the encryption in mind, and that required us to build a data event streaming process that in real time transit the encrypted data to our cloud infrastructure, and without having it to communicate it with other protocols into different microservices, but within that same event stream to be mapped, to be processed, and to be also traced into the data target that we have, and then also put it into a very secure and compliant database. So the way we designed it is that the data structure and data source, it gets encrypted using our wiring format with Kafka, and all our procedures, including the way that our AI mapper is mapping the data, is all in an embedded procedure with our event stream with Flink. And we're also using orchestration within a technology called Temporal, which helps us to communicate an encrypted event from Kafka through our microservices until the procedure is completed and state gets stored in the data target source. So we have to just be super careful with all of these pieces. We are using partner companies to help us monitor and observe all of these procedures, and also to stay compliant with all our interactions and all of our design decisions. So that's pretty much how we managed to build a compliant data mapping in real time.
And Reza, one more question. One more question I was going to ask you. I remember the very first time that we talked, Rivers was interested in basically bringing us as kind of like a partner to do some kind of data training to basically build AI models because you guys have a lot of data from different practices. And you were interested in building basically AI models based on that so that other people can take use of those kind of things. So how's that going? Do you guys have any plans for how you're going to work with AI? Because, I think another big thing that you guys will be looking at would really be the AI part of things, because all AI needs is really data. And basically, I think that would be a great value, like a huge value that you guys will be able to provide to other companies like ours or other sort of companies. Do you have any plans for that right now, or are you doing anything?
Right, sure. So the first plan is to expose the mapping strategies to the clients and letting them see how our mappers and our AI has decided a specific strategy for the mapping within the syntax that we have for the mapping.
Can you
decisions.
elaborate on that? What do you mean on mapping?
So that is basically the data mapping profile that says the field A of the patient data in the EHR got mapped into a field B in the FHIR data structure on the target data source. So you see that as a syntax definition of how this mapping decision got finalized.
So, sorry, just for my own understanding, is that controlled by AI?
Yes, that's generated by our model. So what
Okay.
you see is the mapping profile as our customer, and you can just have a visual graph of how the data from the data A structure got mapped into the data target structure. And you can tweak these and see like, okay, now I would like to grab this data from another table. If you see like if you see a better fit than what our model has decided, then you can enable that for augmentation on our end and enhancement of our model, and in also regenerating all your mappings and rebuilding all your mapping strategies, and also reset all your mapping. So your data will come from a different strategy. It will be generated with a different strategy.
So sorry, just a question right there. If that mapping is done with the help of an AI model that's been trained on a bunch of data, how would you deal with inaccuracies? Because I think inaccuracies when you're building these kind of integrations is very important, and you can't have any. So how do you deal with that, hallucinations and those sort of things?
Right. So first of all, like we don't have any retentions to the LLM models. So our built model is specifically designed for data mapping and building these mapping profiles, and it's trained for this particular purpose. And the way we process it is that we do like a training process for that data structure first, and we make sure that we feed enough data and mapping procedures for making that data available, for making that data actually known to our model. And then at the next stage, we try the mapping and we see the generated profiles, and we start running automation tests on that generated syntax, and also do like automated data validations through augmented data and also unknown data structures. So with the augmented data is that like you actually know the data income and you know what should be the outcome because you generated it yourself. So then you can test the model with that.
So just to basically wrap it up, because I know it's up to the 1 hour mark and Sarah is trying to wrap everything up. So if I can rephrase my question, in AI is basically probabilities. It works based on probabilities. And it's not kind of like algorithm that every time you give it an input, there's going to be a different output. And in terms of the kind of API that you're providing, you want 100% accuracy in what you're mapping in basically the PMS and patient charts. So how do you make sure that, these probabilities never go wrong?
Yeah,
Right.
let me give them the secret sauce here. So as much as we want to say AI is our final icing on the cake, the final icing on the cake is the data scientist, right? And so AI is taking us about, 99, or 97% there with our latest accuracy test. And then our data science, when we perform a new integration, right? AI is going to do about 97% of that data mapping. And then we're going to do our validation with the data scientist, right? And so what's crazy on new integrations, Masood, the mapping is done within a couple hours. It takes us a week to do the validation across all the endpoints, right? At the end of the day. And so that's how we're able to get to the 100% from the initial mapping accuracy. It's a great question, though, and a great dissection. Is that a good answer on it, Reza, in essence?
Yeah, definitely. So
And you, Reza, are the genius Rivers is talking about, right? The data scientist.
And we've got, after our hires last week and today, Reza, I mean, we're at what, 16, 17 full-time engineers? Yeah. We've really doubled down.
That's amazing.
That was kind of our thought was we needed to go fast and hard. And so we just went all in on engineering, and we know at the end of the day, we can win that way, right? At the end of the day. And so that's kind of what we're after right now.
That's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, sir. I'm not going to ask any more questions because I know you're going to cut me off.
Sarah, you're going to be at Dykema.
I was just going to say, for me, what I have learned is a few things. One, I need to incorporate tequila back into my life, and I have now met the individuals who are going to help me do that. So I'm super pumped about that. Tequila, yes. After my 21st birthday, with 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila floor, I cannot drink it anymore. So now I'm excited to meet some connoisseurs who can help me with that. So I've learned that. 2, it's change management, right? I mean, you guys are all talking about things that are way over my sparkly little head, but it's like AI or anything that we're afraid of or unsure of. And so if I have anything to say to industry partners that I talk to every day, it's that if you don't become early adopters to this, somebody else is. and they're going to surpass you and you are going to get left behind. So if anything, you need to follow Hey Donto, listen to Rivers, listen to Reza, and do these things. I know I'm saying this in very simple terms, and Masood, you probably hate me for
What
it.
about
But
me? I also talk about these stuff.
so I learned a lot. Thank you guys so
Thank you.
much. I know it's valuable to, and again, it's to me, it's fear when you don't understand what it is, or you can't necessarily, I know they understand it, but they don't understand the importance. So I'm excited for you guys to be at Dykema. You guys are going to have a blast. I've talked to other people on your team that are going to be there, and you guys have so many amazing people on your team that I adore so much and are so passionate about this. Where are some good places for them to connect with you on social, email? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can obviously find us on LinkedIn at Hey Donto. They can also find us online at HeyDonto.com. You can email me rivers@HeyDonto.com or Reza@HeyDonto.com. We're always available, and we'll have a pretty big team at Dykema, and we're looking to connect and we're looking to network with everyone and drink some tequila too.
Well, Mr. River, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you hopping on here. For the first time ever, I'm going to Dykema this year, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to make sure I got tequila coming for you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Reza,
Thank you
it
so
was nice
much.
to meet you. Thank you so much.
Reza, very nice to meet you. Rivers, very nice to meet you again. Thank you.